And now, the Rink Rrap podcast from Forever Blueshirts, talking all things New York Rangers hockey. Here's your host, Jim Cerny.
Welcome back to Rink Rrap at Forever Blueshirts. I'm Jim Cerny, really pleased to be joined by former New York Ranger forward and a guy that you probably know pretty well from the Miracle on Ice 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team, Rob McClanahan. Rob, thanks so much for a few minutes today.
Happy to do it, Jim. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So many places to start because we got the Ranger angle. I know that's not what everybody's talking about, but we're going to get to that. But then there's, of course, the Winter Olympics just getting underway. And is there something that just gets fired up inside of you when you get to this time of year, when it's near February and, yeah, well, it was at one point it was, last year, 10 years ago, but well, I won't say how many years ago it is now, but does something like get going in you, especially when it's an Olympic year and take you back to Lake Placid, 1980?
For sure. And I love watching all Olympics, not just the winter. We enjoy watching the summer games as well. But obviously a very fond memory dating back, I believe it's 46 years, almost to the day. It brings chills when we think about it and talk about it. And it's nothing but fond memories.
So probably the $1 million question is, does it ever get old? You keep doing these interviews, you keep getting asked, people want to hear about it all these years ago, or does it fire you up that people are still so moved by what happened?
It doesn't get old, and we don't walk around. When I say we, everybody on the team, we don't walk around looking for people to talk to about it, but we're more than willing to have conversations when others bring it up. We're really proud of what we did, what we accomplished. We would be just as proud had we not won a gold medal, but to be able to share it with others and to have it resonate to this day is kind of amazing.
Amazing indeed. And I'll tell you what else is amazing. So the new Netflix documentary comes out. It is out, came out the other day, Miracle, the Boys of 80. And I'm going to be honest, maybe it's because I'm a New Yorker. I was a bit skeptical. I'm like, you know what? Well, first of all, I watched the games when I was a kid. So, I know what happened. I know what it was really like, but I've watched every documentary since the Miracle movie, read the books. I admit it. I'm a hockey junkie. I love it. But it's like, what can they come up with that's new? What don't I know here? What are they going to unearth? And boy, they hit it out of the park. I mean, so much new video and there were so many great angles in there. I was just wondering, from your perspective, having talked about it, lived it, and everything all these years, what was your reaction to the documentary?
I thought Netflix did what they are usually prone to do, and I thought they did a very nice job with a story that everybody already knew. They had talked to us about trying to expose some other players in more depth, and they did that with Mark Johnson. I would have liked to have seen other players maybe be able to chat a little bit about their experiences, maybe Neil Broughton or Mike Ramsey. But quite honestly, at the end of the day, they delivered on a very good product.
Yeah. And when you watch it, and of course, assuming that you watched it all the way through, of course, you're a part of it. I don't know. Do you watch it with a critical eye? Do you just sit back and say, let me see what they've got? Like, how do you watch a documentary like that, of where, of course, you're such a big part of it?
In this case, I watched it trying to see just how far out they stretched their wings in terms of whom they talked to and the depth at which they discuss things. So they went into Kenny Morrow's family life and how he grew up. And a lot of people didn't know that. As I mentioned earlier, they talked to Mark Johnson a lot, and he provided a great angle from his perspective. I mean, here's a guy who played at Wisconsin, Herbie's nemesis. His dad and Herbie they didn't care for each other, and I think he used the word crazy during his interview, if I'm not mistaken, and he wasn't wrong. I mean, when I got hurt, it was the first period of the first game, and here the U.S. team is looking like they've lost their marbles. So that part of the movie I enjoyed. I don't look at it critically. I think they did a nice job, and the comments and everybody reaching out to not only me but to everybody else on the team and talking about it in such positive fashion, it just bodes well for the product.
Yeah. I thought they did a heck of a job, to be honest. And I was, like I said, I was that cynical New Yorker saying, okay, what can they really come up with next year? And like you said, that's what Netflix does, right? They deliver. And you're right. It is cool to find those other aspects, that really go behind the scenes into the people there. And I know this is a little bit of an offshoot, but I know that so many of you have come together, in light of Mark Pavlich's passing, and part of the Still Believe in Miracles gala last year in New York. If you can touch a little bit on Mark and your history with him, and of course his battles, and why that gala last year, that fundraiser was so important, as is the fundraiser, the ranch that was the fundraiser for. If you can speak to that.
So I'll go back first to when Pav and I were teammates. We played against each other in college. He was a great college player, and if people watch those games, Pav was instrumental in assisting on a lot of really key goals. He assisted on Rizzo's goal that over the Soviets. He assisted on Billy Baker's tying goal against Sweden, and that was probably one of the most important goals of the entire tournament.
Absolutely.
Pav, he assisted on Buzzy Snyder's goal, the first goal that we scored against the Soviets. So Pav was exceptional at every level he played. And with the New York Rangers, I believe he still holds the rookie record for points by a rookie. And Pav and I used to room together on the road when I was playing in New York. And you want to talk about the odd couple. Felix and Oscar, excuse me. But we worked through some disagreements and were able to turn into great roommates. And then regarding the ranch and Pav's, the legacy he left there that's where he ended up before he ended up dying. He was at the ranch, and it's primarily for war veterans. And Pav extended that, and now they've expanded on their product. It's a great spot. I've been up there. They do great work in helping people that need help. And so to be able to raise the money we did in New York last year was just something that every one of us wanted to do.
Yeah. It's interesting. And just from a hockey point of view, as you started talking there, talking about what a terrific player Mark was, collegiate level, the Olympics, and then, obviously in the NHL as well. I still remember very vividly that year when he scored when he had the 5-goal game at the Garden, and you were there. You were a teammate then of his in the Rangers. That was a great memory. It's a great Rangers memory with Pav, for sure.
The thing about Pav is he scored those 5 goals, but he would rather have an assist than a goal. That's just the kind of player he was. Very unselfish.
And as you pointed out, was a key playmaker on the 1980 U.S. Olympic squad. You had, Mark Johnson, I believe led the team in goals. And of course you were tied for second with Buzzy Schneider. And I think somebody else had 5 goals in the Olympics, but you had your goal scorers, but he was such a key playmaker. And as you said, had his hand in so many big goals. And I wanted to ask you about Bill Baker's goal because it gets so overlooked when this story is told. I mean, that's your first game. You're down 2-1. You're about to lose. You're under a minute to go. And I mean, let's be honest. Bill Baker was not Mark Johnson, was not the finisher, but he comes up with a massive goal to pull you even and get you tied there, against Sweden, because what happens next may not happen had you not gotten that tie.
A couple of things that I remember about that game. First of all, it was the day before the opening ceremony, so the rink was half full. There weren't a lot of people in there. Billy, he was an All-American in college, so he was a very, very great player. But it was he one-timed a shot, and not in those days, not everybody. A lot of the pros didn't do one-time shots, and so he one-timed that, and the goalie just wasn't ready, and it was, as you mentioned, with under a minute left to go, and it was absolutely the most important goal in the tournament, because if we hadn't tied Sweden, we may not have made the medal round.
Right. And people just forget that. And it's easy to forget because there's some pretty cool things that happen after that. I'll tell you what it also did, and what it started to, I know the base was built before that. And obviously that's the big legacy of this team is how Herb and Craig, how they prepared you, for that year leading up to the Olympics, to be a resilient team, to believe in yourself, to not quit and all that. But another thing I think most people forget is, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was only one game that you didn't trail in the actual Olympics. You were behind. You allowed the first goal in every game except one. And of course, that includes obviously the game against the Soviets and the gold medal game against Finland. Tell me a little bit about that resilience and how that was built up. Certainly, Herb had a big hand in that, but at the end of the day, you're the guys on the ice. So tell me a little bit about that.
We're the players on the ice, but in all honesty, it goes back to the day after he selected the team in Colorado, and Herbie said, one of the things he said is, you're going to improve more in the next 6 months than you have your entire lives, and it's because we're going to play a different style. We're going to possess the puck. We're not going to dump and chase. We're going to interchange positions. We're not going to stay in our lanes, and we're going to play a creative type of game. And the other thing he said was, we may not be the best team in the tournament, but we will be the best conditioned team in the tournament. Yeah. And that conditioning, not only were we in obviously better physical shape than anybody else, but that gave us a mental strength that we didn't realize we'd had before. And Herbie made us realize we were capable of far more than we thought, but it wasn't without its sacrifice and dedication and selfless play. And so I think the goal ratio was during the tournament in the first period is probably 1-1, but in the third period of the 7 games that we played, we outscored our opponents on a ratio of 4-1. And that's absolutely because we were in better shape than anybody else.
Yeah. And it showed. Like, I remember at the time, even as a kid watching these games, but going back and watching, you can see who's getting to the pucks, who's winning the battles, who's getting to the net, who's being turned over, at center ice. I mean, it was really, when you think about what he brought to you guys, the X's and O's of it, as he said, we're going to play a different style, but is that the mental toughness. And I know there are coaches that say you can't teach that. I've heard that from coaches before, and I'm like, I don't know, this group. Yes, you had to have a certain level of that, but I think there must be something to being able to teach that or ingrain it. Maybe that's the right word.
Oh, I think Herbie selected his team predicated on that type of player.
Yeah,
he did his homework on every player, and there were some really, really good players that weren't selected for the team.
Yeah,
but as he's quoted in saying in the movie, he wants he doesn't need the best players. He wants the right players. And one of the reasons, I mean, that resonates. And it also showed because Jack Callahan got hurt in the Soviet game in Madison Square Garden. And he didn't play the first 3 games or 4 games or whatnot because of his knee. Right. And yet Herbie kept him on the team because chemistry plays a big part. He let Ralph Cox go, Ralph Cox was the best goal scorer I've ever seen. His shot was just so efficient and so quick, but Ralph didn't have what Herbie wanted, and that was a guy who was a very, very high-end skater. And because we played on an Olympic-sized sheet, 200 by 100 feet versus 200 by 85, he felt that was going to jeopardize our success. And I mean, Ralph's a very good friend of mine to this day, and it was a tough one for him, and he handled it like a pro.
Yeah. And you mentioned that Soviet game at the Garden. I was there sitting way up back when they had blue seats at Madison Square Garden. That's where I was sitting. And me and my buddy were sitting there, we're looking at each other like, I don't know, this isn't going to go so well when the Olympics start. It was 10-2 final. What was that post game kind of afterwards? What was that like amongst the players? What did you take out of that? What was the feeling after that 10-2 loss at the Garden?
It was very somber, very quiet. We didn't say a lot. We just ended up going back to Lake Placid, and we actually had a team meeting the next day. And Herbie was prepared for everything, and he went through the scenarios. He said, if we play at the top of our game and get some breaks, we can win a bronze. If we play at the top of our game and get every break, we can win a silver. Forget the gold. Soviets have the gold. And he went on to say the first two games against the Swedes and the Czechs are the most important, because that would set up the table for the rest of the tournament. Yeah. And he was right. And once we took care of our business in those two games, it was just up to us. We controlled our own destiny. And during that 2-week period, we saw the Soviets having to come from behind against the Canadians in pool play. They had to come from behind against the Finns. And so they were flat. They weren't nearly as sharp as they had been in the past, maybe overconfident. And so once we got to that semifinal game, we play the Soviets 100 times, we lose 99, but we knew we had a chance.
Right. I just want to finish kind of the thread on Herb. Coached, you played for him college, played for him U.S. Olympic team, you played for him in the NHL with the Rangers. Tell me the differences, because those are distinctly different roles. Maybe college was a little bit more close to, the 1980 U.S. Olympic team, but still three different types of teams that he had to coach. And obviously the pro game, very different, and a lot of other things that a coach has to deal with. So from your perspective, please share.
If nothing else, Herb was a student of the game. In college, he was dealing with kids who were 18 to 22 years old. And it was a different era. And it was one of being very stern, and it was my way or the highway. Yeah. And, but always a student. And while he was at Minnesota, we became his guinea pigs, in the sense of a lot of the drills that we ended up practicing on the Olympic team, we started practicing at Minnesota. And so he would refine those drills as the season progressed. On the Olympic team, he treated us like professionals. He treated us like adults. He was still hard on us. He had very hard, high expectations for everyone, and he never cut corners. He pushed us hard, and but that's because he cared for us. And as he progressed into the pros, he took it a step further, because, as I said, he's a student of the game. And Herbie realized that in order to get everyone to buy into what he wanted, he had to get his leaders to buy in first. And once his leaders, his captains and his best players did that, everyone else would follow. And that's how it happened. That's how it worked. Now, did people get tired of playing for Herbie in the pros? I'm sure they did. He's not an easy coach to play for. Very demanding.
Yeah.
But he had the ability to get the best out of each player at the most important time. I'll go back to the Olympic Games. Our best period of the 70 games we played in the exhibition schedule and the 7 we played in Lake Placid, our absolute best period by far was the third period against the Finns.
Yeah.
And that just shows what he's capable of.
Yeah. And you point that out, and it goes back to what we said before. There's another game. Like, again, people forget, if they're not students or historians, or if they just not paying attention, the gold medal was not won when you skated off the ice after defeating the Soviets.
Had we lost to the Finns, we would not have gotten the medal.
That's exactly right. And it still would have been an amazing accomplishment, but would have been devastating to this group after what you had just done. And
sure.
there's another game. You guys are trailing again. And that third period, you outscore Finland 3-0 and come away with the gold because you had to outscore them 3-0 to come away with the gold. It's another example of how it's the ultimate example of how you guys had to overcome again. But you were ready for that moment, is what you're saying. When you had to play your best period, that's when you guys delivered.
Yep, absolutely. And that's a credit to Herb and his coaching strategy and coaching style.
Yeah. So I'm sure you've been asked this before, but how difficult was it to transition? Like for most kids, you go a college player at the NCAA level, you're hoping to, turn pro, and that's going to be that's the ultimate, that's the next big step. And here you were, just shortly after this incredible achievements, that entire Olympics and beating the Soviets and winning the gold medal. And now you're in the NHL, and it almost, at least from the outside, I could see being, boy, how do you maintain that incredible level that you're at of intensity when this should be, or, probably as you were growing up thinking, if I can get to the NHL, that's going to be the pinnacle, that's the big thing. But yet, I don't know, how did it size up, and how did you kind of keep that level going?
For me, it was tough at first. What I should have done, quite honestly, after we won the gold, is not signed with Buffalo.
Yeah.
Or signed with Buffalo, but not played the rest of that year. I was absolutely physically and emotionally toast, and was done for that season. I should have waited until the fall and just kind of regrouped myself. But I never grew up thinking I wanted, wanting to win a gold medal. Never thought about it. But I did think about, I'd love to be a professional hockey player. So the objective and the goal, even at the beginning of the Olympic year, was this is just another step to make the NHL. And I wouldn't ever look back and say, I wish I had done something differently, because that experience that we had, that 79 and 80 season, was, as I said earlier, it was the most fun I ever had. And we learned so much about selfless play and about ourselves, both as individuals as well. And it just helped build our confidence, both as a team and as individuals.
And we really appreciate your time today. Rob McClanahan is our guest. When you came to the Rangers, you spent 2.5 seasons with the Rangers, including your best season by far in the NHL, playing under Herb Brooks. And of course, Craig Patrick was there in the organization as well in the front office. And when you came to the Rangers, and obviously Pavlich was there. I think Bill Bake, was he there when you got there? I know Bill Baker did play for them.
Came in, and Dave Silk was there.
And Dave Silk, right. So you had some familiar faces and all that, but I don't know, what was your welcome to New York, welcome to Madison Square Garden, welcome to the Rangers moment? Can you think of one?
It was the first game. It was great, quite honestly. Just everybody was welcoming, and he put me on with Pav, and I think Ron Duguay, if I'm not mistaken, maybe not the first game, but early on when I got there. And I ended up loving to play in New York. I'd heard in the past that people didn't like to play in the Garden. The ice was bad, and it was a pain to get to. I never had a problem with the ice, and I certainly didn't have a problem playing in Madison Square Garden. It was a lot of fun, and the crowd was always supportive of what the Rangers did. And we were always really competitive back then. Back in we won 40 games several years, and we always gave the Islanders the best playoff competition. We just couldn't get past them.
I say this a lot, when fans talk about, all these years between Stanley Cups and what have you. I'm like, those early Ranger teams, starting with 79, the 78-79 team, which actually upset, the Islanders en route to making it to the Stanley Cup final. I often say, boy, you missed a heck of a lot of good hockey, or you're just bypassing it and not even thinking about how good those Ranger teams were. They just had the terrible misfortune that not only did they play in the same state and within miles of a dynasty, but they were, worse, you were in the same division and conference. So it wasn't like you were getting them in the Stanley Cup final and, hey, bounce here, maybe we'll win it all. No, you got to take them in the second round every year. That's a tough road to hoe.
Tough team. They were a great team, and they could play any style that they needed to find success. They could play a fast game, they could play physical game, and they had the horses to do it. And they were really high quality, really good team.
Yeah, and when I was talking about your welcome to New York moments and all that, Steve Valiquette, former Ranger goalie, is now a broadcaster. Valley used to always tell me, everybody, I think he only made a couple starts at the Garden because he was a backup. Henrik Lundqvist played every game at the Garden. But Valley had, I think it was a shutout too, over the Flyers at the Garden. And afterwards, I had known Valley back to the days with the Islanders and all. And he pulled me aside. He said, you know what? Everybody should just have one Madison Square Garden moment in their careers because it is unbelievable. So, I mean, you had a bunch, obviously, and you had your lone NHL hat trick, right? Was at the Garden.
Against the Minnesota North Stars, too.
Against the North Stars, right? That had to be special.
It was fun.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, and maybe it was that, but was there, like, Valley had that was his moment, that game. Was there one real, this is my Rangers moment, this is my Garden moment?
Obviously, the game against the North Stars, that was the day before Thanksgiving, if I'm not mistaken. That goes down in my memory bank for sure. But right up there with everything else is every time we played the Flyers in the playoffs, we hammered them, we smoked them. They couldn't skate with us. And, back in those days, a bunch of us were labeled Smurfs because of the cartoon. And the Flyers just did not know how to play against us. They just didn't have the guys that could stay with us, and we just steamrolled them. And those games against the Flyers sit up just as high as my hat trick against Minnesota.
Yeah, let's be honest. You frustrated the heck out of that team.
Yep.
Right? But probably you could argue you frustrated the Soviets back in 1980 as well to no end. But boy, those Ranger teams really drove the Flyers insane.
We had fun. That's for sure.
You had some good characters there too. I'm sure if you want to write the book one day, you've got a good one. You mentioned playing on a line with Duguay. How about sharing a locker room with Duguay?
Well, Doogie, you go on Carol Vadney after every game. He'd pull out the big cigar. Nicky Fatio, great teammate. And Nicky provided some spark that you needed back in those days, and a true New Yorker, right?
Yep. Staten Island.
You have you had Eddie Mio and net some of the time. I mean, a lot of characters on that team. For sure.
There are a lot of characters. All right. A lot of times I do this with former Rangers. It puts you on the spot a little bit. But who's the funniest guy? Who's the funniest teammate? And it could be for any reason. But I just did this with Derek Stepan the other day, and he gave me a list of about 12 guys. I said,
Tommy Laidlaw used to like to pull pranks. I don't know how, I don't remember Lades as funny, but I do remember you had to watch out for your stuff because he was always doing something to your stuff. That's probably the best story I can come up with.
And he's still that way. He's a pretty funny guy. Is that, and I know players say this all the time, and you're so fortunate you have this brotherhood of, yes, former NHL teammates and all that, but certainly that 1980 group. I mean, it's brothers for life. You walk together forever with what you guys did. I guess just closing with that, and your thoughts and speaking to just how special that is to you personally, and understanding what it means to your group and everybody that it touched along the way and continues to.
So obviously we are, as I mentioned earlier, we are exceptionally proud of what we accomplished. but it wasn't without its dedication, hard work, and perseverance. I mean, we went through some really challenging times as a team. Herbie pushed us as harder than any coach I've ever played for. And obviously the result speaks for itself, but there were times where we were shaking our heads saying, what in heck? And, but we stuck it out. And because of that, we were a close-knit team, regardless of whether we had won the gold medal or not. And that's because of the experience we went through the 63 games prior to the Olympic Games themselves. And as hard as Herbie was to play for, and there was always a method to his madness. And we were in the right place at the right time. Kenny Morrow uses a quote that I share when I speak to people. Success occurs when preparation meets opportunity. Think about that. Success occurs when preparation meets opportunity. Now, you're not guaranteed to even identify an opportunity if you're not in condition and mentally ready to play. So Herbie made sure of that right away. But if you're not in shape and if you're not mentally prepared, that opportunity will come and go before you have any idea that it was there. And there's no set time. There's no set place for when that opportunity or an opportunity will present itself. But if you don't prepare for it, it doesn't matter. And so if there's one thing we did prepare for, was opportunities. And because we did, and it came out and presented itself, did we take advantage? We got breaks in the Soviet game that were abnormal, for sure. But that's sports. That's why you play the games.
Right.
And
right.
The bond that we have has just been strengthened by the fact that we won gold. And, they say once an Olympian, always an Olympian. And we walk every day amongst ourselves and amongst everyone else with a great pride in knowing that, for sure.
That is a perfect way to close this out. Rob, thank you so much for your time today. It was a real pleasure. I know we spoke a while ago when I used to work for the Rangers. We did an interview or two, and I remember how much I enjoyed it then. And hopefully I didn't take up too much of your day today, because I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Jim. Enjoy.